Hello everybody, this is LCDR Keys, hello Reddit, and hello YouTube. I say Reddit first because I am posting this because of the D&D Next subreddit that has been so good to me as I have been moving from 3.5 or Pathfinder to the 5th edition of D&D. As I now have all of the books, we just completed our second session. While nobody is really truly, an expert right now on 5th edition, other than maybe Chris Perkins and the guys that put it all together, because it hasn't been out for too long, nobody has years of experience, I figured I would share some tips and tricks, things that I do as a DM, because I do have, let's see, well, I've got 5 solid years of playing role-playing games, and then I've got about 4, going on 4 years of DMing, going on solid 4 years, that's right, because I started running games after my girlfriend and I met, so good solid 4 years of DMing. First tip to DMs, if you're going to talk a lot, this isn't one of the serious tips, it's just a good one. Altoids. Learn to love Altoids, because if you talk a lot, Altoids are going to save your voice. I have not used this trick yet during a session, because I just learnt of this trick. One of my players learnt it from one of his old DMs that he had way back in the day. And so, because I was losing my voice one session, that player went online and bought me 2 store boxes of Altoids. So I've got 9 boxes of, or 9 tins of Altoids, each with 75 to 100 pieces of Altoids in them. It's fantastic. And pardon me if I seem a little congested, my nose is kind of clogged up, but okay, on to it. This video is going to be tips on adventure building, and I'm not going to go in detail into really like, hey, this is what you're going to do to build an adventure. So if you're looking for an A to B or A to Z tutorial on like how to build an adventure, this is not it. I might do one in the future, maybe not, but this is tips to, these are just things to remember while you are building your adventure. These are 7 things that are very, very important and can ultimately make your adventure stand out and be a hell of a lot better than it would have been if you had ignored these tips. These are my 7 golden rules that are definitely not the only golden rules, but these are 7 golden rules. So while building an adventure, number 1, reward, risk, and progress. So you don't just want to reward progress, like most DMs are going to, and you should reward progress. End of the dungeon, treasure, end of a storyline, level up, or you've got this so much XP, level up, however you're doing it. You also want to reward risk. So if a player takes a risk by, running in to try to save an NPC at the last moment, or does something risky that could get them killed in order to save the day or to progress the story, you should reward that risk as well. Even if they fail, you should find a way to make that failure something that they will remember and treasure rather than regret, because if you make players regret risk, they will not take risks, and then that will be detrimental to progress. You want your players to take risks and enjoy failure, not nearly as much as success, but you want them to not necessarily enjoy failure, but accept it and be okay with it. You don't want them to freak out. You don't want to make it so terrible for them that they're never going to take a risk again. So reward risks and progress. It might be extra treasure for a risk. It might be it depends on the situation. You might have saved somebody who has power in a town, and suddenly they gain a title. They are now a lord, or something like that, of this area. And that can influence the way that the game goes. Number 2, consider other outcomes. This is one that I have trouble remembering to do. So, example. For those of you familiar with the Forgotten Realms, I decided to use Elminster as kind of an usher for getting the players on their way. They all receive a letter from Elminster. It's just signed L. They don't know who it is. And none of my players actually know who Elminster is because they haven't read Forgotten Realms. I'm new to reading the Forgotten Realms. But I'm learning... excuse me. I'm learning very quickly of its rich history. But anyways, basically, they were all going to meet in a location. They were all... L kind of lied to them a bit and told them they were all there for different reasons. When they all got there, they're all wondering why they're there. This guy who wrote them the letters is not there. They hear in the distance this chanting. And they go there and they find that there are these cultists who later they find out are cultists of Bane trying to make a sacrifice of a local, of a commoner that they've kidnapped or from a village. And they're going to basically just gut him on this slab of rock here in the woods to the Dark Lord Bane. And anyways, I anticipated... Let me clear my nose a second here. I am so sorry. Bleh. I expected one of two outcomes. Either they were going to... I expected them to either rush in and save the day, or I expected them to maybe kind of hesitate and not quite rush in, maybe fail at saving the NPC. Maybe they sneak around a bit too long, observing what's going on in the woods. But actually what happened was the dwarf fighter walks up and just kind of stands there, and he's just watching it all happen. These guys about to like murder some dude. There's a bunch of cloaked guys around a dude on a stone slab being held down. They have a knife over him. They're about to kill him. He's screaming and crying. And the dwarf fighter just goes up. He's the first one there on the scene, I believe. He goes over there, and I may be wrong about who was first there if my players are watching this. But anyways, he gets up there and he just kind of stands there. And they notice him and he's like, "Hey, just wondering what you're doing." And like his character, he wasn't trying to derail anything. He wasn't trying to fuck with me as a DM. But his character was honestly the kind of character who, and this is something that I really like about his character, he's not going to rush in there and try to be the hero and destroy, just kill a bunch of people because, what I see you're doing I believe is evil. No, he's like, "Hey, I just want to know what you guys are doing. This is, He was curious about their religious practice and was not going to jump to any conclusions. And he finally engaged them when they engaged him first. So, anyways, consider opposite outcomes. And, basically whatever way you anticipate your players to react, always anticipate them to react in the exact opposite way and be prepared for that to happen. That way you're never caught in a situation where you are there behind the DM screen and you're just kind of like, you never want that moment because it looks bad on you and it breaks that consistency away from that world, that smooth flow. So we'll move on. Number 3, give plenty of options. This one is kind of obvious. Even if you're railroading and if you're doing a very linear storyline, which I don't really encourage doing, but so at lower levels, in order to get them hooked into a bigger plot, you kind of have to a little bit most of the time. I would, unless you're just doing an open world kind of free-for-all, I would, give them lots of options. If they need to, instead of having, basically, think of things like this. Yes, you have your plot, and your plot should be listed out 1, 2, 3, okay? 1, 2, and 3. while your plot is listed out 1, 2, and 3, have different ways that you can go about approaching each of these situations inside of that plot. Maybe you skip to 2 before you even know about 1, or before you go to 3. Basically, while the plot is railroaded and there may not be a lot of branches off from different decisions in the main plot, for example, like in video game terms, if you're playing like Dragon Age or a BioWare game like Knights of the Old Republic, there may not be a lot of unlike those games, there may not be a lot of branches. So, for example, in the main plot, you may not have a lot of actual branches off from what you're doing. From the main plot is what I mean. But you might have a lot of different ways about handling the different situations that are there. So that's what I would recommend doing, is that provide plenty of options. You don't have to have a lot of choices that affect the overarching plot, because that can make your life as a DM hell in a handbasket to give them literally every other choice affects the main plot. Literally, you can't plan out more than half a session at a time at that point. But give them plenty of options about how to go about handling situations. Number 4, don't fill in all the blanks. And this is something that Ed Greenwood has preached about. Gary Gygax, a lot of the big names in Monty Cook, a lot of the big names in gaming have talked about at one time or another. And that's, if you have a big map, here's a couple major cities and everything, don't fill it all in with cities if you're creating your own campaign setting. If you have 3 main events that are going to happen this session, or you plan to happen this session, and they're all spaced out, don't plan all what happens during all the travel time there. Maybe come up with an encounter or 2, but don't plan the interactions at the tavern. Don't plan, exactly what they see and exactly what happens. Have some monsters prepared. Have some NPCs always on hand. Have some, tables ready to go. In my other video, I talked about, my D&D binder with all of my tables and everything in it that I roll on, and that's how I do improv stuff. But basically, don't fill in all the blanks. Be ready to improv, and I'll get to how you use that improv, blah, 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 how you use your improvisation to your benefit as you go along. We'll get to that here in a second. Number 5, leave plenty of right choices as well as plenty of wrong choices. You need to have success as well as failure, and you need to have consequences for those failures. So, for example, in the first session of my 5e campaign, there was a chance that the NPC that the cultists, the worshippers of Bane, had captured, there's a good chance that he would die. And he almost did. They almost didn't save him. And if he were to die, there were consequences. Depending on what they chose to do. If they chose to bring the body back to the town, how do they explain themselves? What happened? If they don't, then do the cultists of Bane report the description of the adventurers to the local town guard and say that they saw a murder happen in the woods, and now the guard is out for the adventurers? There are consequences for your actions. If you save him, is there a reward? Do you gain a new connection? What happens? Number 6, take notes during the game and add to the world as you from all of your on-the-fly creations, and then build off of them. So what I do after every game, basically what I do is I have a pad of paper, and during game I make quick bullet point notes, and sometimes I just use post-it notes. But during game, after game, I go back and I have my 5e sessions notebook, and it's just a big thick notebook, and I'll probably have 2 of these, 3 of these, 4 of these by the time we're done. But what I do is up here in the top corner. I write session 1, then the date, and then I write in things that I need to remember or things that were created in on the fly. And this is where I keep track of everything. I keep track of what happened this session, what was accomplished, what was learned, and I use a program called RealmWorks. That helps me do most of that, but this is mainly for my recap for the next session. But what I mean by on-the-fly creations is in here I keep track of player-created moments. So, for example, in session 1, player-created moments, players met an old map maker who sold them a map in the nameless Shadowdale Tavern. So they went looking for a map, and I didn't have planned out that they were going to go look for a map. I didn't have a guy ready for that. So I just made up an NPC on the fly. I kind of just, boom, right then and there, decided what he was like, what he looked like, how he talked, and I rolled with it, gave him a name and everything. It's good. And then, later on, I go back through these notes. I added him into my RealmWorks, the program I used to organize my campaign. I added him in there, and he's now part of my world permanently. And I might use him later. Maybe not. Who cares? He's there. And that was the only player-created moment there. Let me see if there was a good example in session 2. Session 2, they gained favor with the Archwood Tree Ant leader. Now, pardon me if I cough too much, or if I offend you in your realm's lore. What I'm running is my interpretation of the Forgotten Realms, using both the, here I'll show you because it's so cool, using not only this book, the 3rd edition book, but I am also using, yes, what is he reaching for? What is this man reaching for? What could it possibly be? But yes, I am also using the 1987 Forgotten Realms Grey Box, which is full of all sorts of goodies. And I absolutely love this box set. It's gonna do a lot of good for this campaign, and has done a lot of good for this campaign so far. But anyways, so don't get offended if, like, I change up the lore and I move things around, because it's just my interpretation. But anyways, yeah, take notes, because, and also what I do with my notes is not only do I keep track of stuff for recap, player-created moments that I can add into my world and manipulate, but I also keep track of questions during session, so rules clarifications, because what I do in my game is I don't slow down for the rules. Nuh-uh. I've made it very clear to my players that if a rule question comes up, I will, bam, make a ruling. It happens that way that one time. When I get a moment, I'll look it up and clarify. So, for example, question. We had a question that came up. And this was one that I was fairly certain on, but I had to go back and read through. And this was, do negative hit points exist? And I went back and the answer was no. Only negs only determine if an instant death occurs. After that, they're considered to have 0 hit points, and they make the saving throws. And then also, we had a question about attacks of opportunity, and so I looked those up and clarified them later. But anyways, yeah. And then I also just keep track of memorable moments. But this will help you go back, and you'll be able to look at previous sessions for inspiration, like what was cool, what was really fun and exciting. And then what other things did the players create in the world? What can I add into my world permanently for my use and abuse? And then 7, last but not least, is the most important. With every magic item, monster, trap, or other PC challenge or interaction, ask yourself this: how can I do that better? For example, and this is something the YouTube channel Dawnforge Cast has talked about a lot. For example, I gave my players, basically it was a Cure Wounds potion, but they got it for helping the treant, and it was, he broke off a part of his branch and he squeezed it into a vial that they had, and that is magical healing water. And it works a little differently than the normal healing potion does as well. For example, like, take a magic item, shake it up a little bit. Take a monster. I've used the stats from one monster. Like, I've used the stats from one dragon, or like a small dragon, to be the like the shadow creature that or something like that. I've used the goblin war chief stat block to be some other creature. Mix up your monster stats, use stats, but change what they look like, give them another ability, and mix it up. Same thing with traps and things like that. Just alter things and ask yourself, what would make this even cooler? How can I fit this into the campaign better? Things like that. So, anyways, I'll wrap it up there because I've been talking for a while, but those are my 7 things to remember when building and creating campaigns and adventures. Reward, risk, and progress. Consider opposites and other outcomes. Give plenty of options. Do not fill in all the blanks. Leave plenty of right options and wrong options. Take notes during the game and add to the world on player-based creations. And with everything you do for the players, ask yourself, how can I do that better than the book says it? So with that, I leave you. This is LCDR Keys. See you next time.